considered today. I urge my colleagues to join me in opposing this rule and the underlying bill. We can and we will have the opportunity to do better. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Colorado reserves. Gentleman from Florida is recognized.
I continue to reserve.
Gentleman continues to reserve. Gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 2.5 minutes to the gentleman from California, Mr. Schiff.
Gentleman is recognized for 2.5 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Mr. Speaker, I rise in reluctant opposition to this rule and to the underlying bill in its current form. I greatly appreciate the nonpartisan work on the issue by Chairman Rogers and Ranking Member Ruppersberger. They've worked in a refreshingly collaborative fashion on this bill and on the work of the Intelligence Committee generally. Yet I find I cannot support the bill in its current form due to my concerns about its impact on civil liberties and the privacy of Americans. While amendments were submitted to the Rules Committee that would address these issues, including an amendment I jointly submitted with Ms. Schakowsky and Mr. Hastings, none of these amendments were made in order in this rule. I share the view of the sponsors of the legislation that cybersecurity is a serious issue that requires congressional action. I also believe that information sharing is an important piece of responding to the cybersecurity threats, though it is by no means sufficient alone without other elements such as hardening critical infrastructure against cyber attacks. I'm disappointed in the rule because the problems with the bill are eminently fixable, and in fact multiple amendments, including my own, were submitted that would improve the bill. Yesterday afternoon, the White House issued a statement of administration policy saying the President's senior advisors would advise him to veto the bill if it came to him in the current form because of a lack of protection for civil liberties. As the administration statement said, cybersecurity and privacy are not mutually exclusive. I believe we can and must protect ourselves from cyber attack and that we can and must preserve our privacy. This is eminently doable, but we are not there yet. My amendment, which was not made in order, would have accomplished 4 tasks. First, it would have made DHS, a civilian agency, the primary coordinating agency for information sharing. Second, would require rules to minimize the sharing of personally identifiable information. The amount of personally identifiable information shared would be the least amount needed to combat the cybersecurity threat, and no more. Third, it would narrow the uses of cybersecurity information to cybersecurity purposes, specific national security threats, and certain other serious crimes. And finally, it would more specifically define cyber threat information to make sure that we don't sweep up information we don't intend to and don't need. In conclusion, amendments like this one would have improved the bill and better balanced the need to protect ourselves against cyber threats with the equal imperative of preserving the privacy of the American people. I'm disappointed that the House won't have the opportunity to vote on those amendments, and as a result, I urge a no vote on the rule, and I yield back.
The gentleman from Florida.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Barton.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. I ask the Senate to revise and extend.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I do rise in support of the rule. I think the number of amendments that they made in order is consistent with Speaker Boehner's policy of running an open House. Unfortunately, one of those amendments that was not made in order is the Barton-Markey Amendment on privacy. I am going to vote no on the underlying bill because it does not protect the privacy of the individual American citizen. We do have a real threat, a cyber threat in this country. This bill is an honest attempt to deal with that threat, but absent explicit privacy protection against individuals, to me that is a greater threat to democracy and liberty than the cyber threats that face America. So unless they pull the bill and they revise some of the privacy protections, I am going to ask for a no vote on the bill, but on the rule, I do think we should vote for the rule. And I thank the gentleman for yielding to me.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Colorado.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to yield 2.5 minutes to the gentleman from Mississippi, Mr. Thompson. There he is.
The gentleman from Mississippi is recognized for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition to this rule and the underlying bill. At the beginning of this Congress, expectations were high for meaningful progress on cybersecurity. Speaker Boehner even established a task force within the Republican conference to come up with recommendations. But a funny thing happened on the way to Cyber Week. Key Republican task force recommendations were abandoned. They abandoned measures to improve data breach notification laws, formalize DHS cyber role, and more importantly, enhance the cybersecurity of critical infrastructure networks. These omissions from Cybersecurity Week were no small matter. With all, we have critical infrastructure in our districts, be it a pipeline, a power plant, an airport, or even a dam. Top national security officials, both in the Obama and Bush administrations, have briefed us on the significant cyber attacks to critical infrastructure. They have told us that voluntary information sharing is simply not enough. In fact, the CSIS Cyber Commission, the Republican Task Force, and NSA Director Alexander have all said that Congress must do something to proactively address critical infrastructure vulnerabilities. But House leadership ignores these voices. Instead, it has decided that information sharing alone is enough to fix the problem. Mr. Speaker, this boils down to a simple question. Who do you trust? Turning to H.R. 3523, what does it do? In an effort to improve our cybersecurity, this bill would erode the privacy protections of every single American using the Internet. Put simply, this bill will allow any certified business to share with any government agency who can then use this information for any national security purpose and grant that business immunity from virtually any liability. None of these amendments authored by the Intelligence Committee would change this truth. Further, the Rules Committee decided to block consideration of amendments submitted by me and other like-minded colleagues to address the fundamental policy flaws in this bill. If my colleagues want to do something on cybersecurity, then vote yes on any or all of the suspension bills to be considered today. But do not vote for H.R. 3523. It would set us back privacy rights that our constituents have enjoyed since the beginning of the Internet. Again, I urge my colleagues to vote no on the rule and the underlying bill. I yield back.
Gentleman from Florida.
Mr. Speaker, I continue to reserve my time.
Gentleman from Florida reserves. The gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my honor to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Markey.
The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized for 2 minutes.
This legislation might as well be called the Cyber Insecurity Bill because it fails to address the reality of cyber threats already facing our nation. And if this bill had a privacy policy, it would read, "You have no privacy." They would not even allow the Barton-Markey privacy language to be put in order to debate out here on the House floor. Let's talk about what the bill does not do. Although the bill would allow the government to tell nuclear power plant operators that a new version of the Stuxnet computer worm could cause widespread Fukushima-style meltdowns in this country, would this bill require the industry to take even a single step to protect American nuclear reactors? No. Would this bill require industry to even tell the government what it is doing to protect against a cyber threat nuclear meltdown? No. Would this bill require industry to even tell the government when it had experienced an actual cyber attack? No. Now let's talk about what this bill would do. Could companies share personal information about consumers with other companies, even if that information had nothing to do with cybersecurity? Yes. Would companies be free from liability if they share that personal information of every American? Yes. Could the government use personal information to spy on Americans? Yes. In this last Congress, Fred Upton and I wrote the GRID Act, which passed by voice vote on the suspension calendar 2 years ago. It would have said to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission that you have the authority to mandate grid security standards against an attack coming in from Iran or from China. This bill does nothing. to protect against a threat at the electricity grid system in this country that could lead to nuclear meltdowns. This Republican Congress still refuses to bring out the real security we need against a cyber attack. We have an all-volunteer army in Iraq and Afghanistan, brave men and women, but they follow orders. We must give the orders
Gentleman's time has
to
expired.
the electric industry, to the other industry, to protect this country against the cyber attack.
Expired.
This bill does not do it.
Gentleman from Florida.
Continue to reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Florida continues to reserve. Gentleman from Colorado.
Mr. Speaker, if we defeat the previous question, I will offer an amendment to the rule to provide that immediately after the House adopts this rule, we'll bring up H.R. 4816, Mr. Tierney's bill to prevent a doubling of student loan interest rates fully paid for and then some, reducing the deficit by $7 billion by repealing tax giveaways for big oil companies. To discuss our student loan bill, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Tierney.
I thank the
gentleman from
for
Massachusetts
yielding.
recognized 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, it's imperative that this House take action to stop the need-based student loan interest rate from doubling at the end of June. If we defeat the previous question, then the House will have the opportunity to take up a bill that I have filed and introduced that will keep those interest rates at 3.4% for 1 year. My Democratic colleagues and I recognize the importance of being fiscally responsible, so our bill is completely paid for. We pay for it by ending unnecessary tax subsidies for big oil and gas companies. These are the same companies that took home $80 billion in profits last year. The same company, Exxon, that pocketed nearly $4.7 million every hour. We have to make choices here in Congress, and our side of the aisle believes that it's a fair and reasonable choice to eliminate an unjustified subsidy to hugely profitable industries so that 7 million students, including some 177,000 in my Commonwealth of Massachusetts alone, so that they will not see an increase in their student loans. Our side of the aisle believes that encouraging middle-class students and their families to be able to pay for college education should be a bigger priority than continuing tax subsidies for big oil. Now, the other side of the aisle has been tremendously late to this issue. I know the presumptive nominee for the presidential race has changed his mind and come around to believing that this is important, and so it's practice that he does on a regular basis. But the fact of the matter is they've come around to the side that knowing that we should keep these interest rates low, and we welcome that. But the fact of the matter is that they have decided to make the wrong choice in how we're going to pay for it. The bill that's expected to come to the House floor tomorrow includes a short-term fix for the student loan issue, but will do it at the expense of women and children. What is it with my colleagues on the other side of the aisle? It's the knee-jerk reaction of every time they have to do something, they take a gratuitous swipe at women's health benefits and women's health choices. Their bill would end funding for breast and cervical cancer screenings for women. Their bill would end funding for child immunizations. Their bill makes the wrong and the reckless choice. I urge my colleagues to defeat this motion so we can consider the bill on the floor, my bill on the floor, for a vote that makes the right choice. Make sure we keep the rates low. Make sure that oil companies get rid of that subsidy that they no longer need.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Florida.
Continue to reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Florida continues to reserve. The gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from California, the ranking member of the Education and Workforce Committee, Mr. Miller.
The gentleman is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks. I rise in strong support of the Tierney motion, the legislation that he and Mr. Courtney of Connecticut introduced yesterday in the Congress. For years now, the Democrats have stood on the side of lower interest rates for families and for students. We paid for 4 years of that starting in 2007. We took the money and the subsidies away from the big banks, and we recycled that on behalf of students and their families to lower the cost of college, to make it more affordable for those families seeking a college education for the young children. But the fact of the matter is, the Republicans fought that effort. They're fighting that effort today, or actually they were fighting it yesterday, and they changed their minds. After almost a unanimous vote in their budget, the Ryan budget, the Republican budget, to allow student interest rates to double, they have now changed their mind. That's important, that's good, and we need to make sure that they don't double on July 1st. But the fact of the matter is, when you say, how are you going to pay for that, because we want it paid for. We don't want to do what they did last week and provide $46 billion in tax cuts to the wealthiest Americans and add it to the deficit. $46 billion in new deficit spending in 1 year. So the Speaker says, well, he's just going to take it out of a slush fund. Really? The Speaker of the House thinks that the prevention fund is a slush fund? The Speaker of the House thinks that birth defects and the funding to mitigate birth defects is a slush fund? Does the Speaker of the House really believe that a screening program for women in cervical and breast cancer is a slush fund? No, this is a matter of life and death for young children who get immunized out of the prevention fund. For women who get the screening, we know what early detection of breast cancer means for women and survivability rates. This isn't a slush fund. But what they're asking you to do is to repeal this fund that goes to communities all over this country so that people will have access to this kind of preventative care. Yes, they'll say, but you took some money out of this fund to do the payroll tax reduction for middle class. Yes, but we didn't repeal the fund. They're taking $10 billion out of the fund and repealing it and putting women and children at risk. That's not a slush fund, Mr. Speaker. That's immoral.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Florida.
Mr. Speaker, I continue to reserve.
The gentleman continues to reserve. The gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Connecticut, Mr. Courtney.
The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our second president, John Adams, once said, facts are stubborn things, and whatever may be our wishes or the dictates of our passion, they cannot alter the state of facts. How we got here in the student loan bill, here's the facts, unlike what was stated by the proponent of this rule. On January 24th, the President of the United States stood on that podium and challenged Congress to block the increase of rates from 3.4% to 6.8%. The Republican majority has done nothing over the last 3 months to respond to that. No bill, no hearing, no markup, and in fact, passed a Ryan budget which locked in the higher rate at 6.8% and doubled down and went after Pell Grants for needy students who need those grants to pay for college. The politics has changed. That's the fact, what happened here, and the Speaker's reversal over the last 24 hours, which we welcome, is now being paid for by a grotesque pay-for which goes after women and children rather than going after the folks who can afford to pay for it, the oil companies, the gas companies who made $137 billion in profits last year. Support the tyranny motion and oppose this rule. I yield back.
The gentleman from Florida.
Continue to reserve.
Continues to reserve. The gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my honor to yield 1 minute to my colleague, the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Peters.
The gentleman from Michigan is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to have co-sponsored legislation to keep student loan rates from doubling in 65 days. My colleagues, Mr. Courtney and Mr. Tierney. Right now, millions of high school seniors are deciding where they are going to attend college. At kitchen tables across the country, students are making decisions that will impact the rest of their lives. So today I find it hard to believe that Republicans have decided to pit public health against higher education. By introducing this misguided, deeply partisan bill, it is clear that my Republican colleagues aren't taking the responsibilities to families very seriously. It is unconscionable that this body would be playing politics with our children's future. With the same urgency that Republicans rammed through a $46 billion tax cut to millionaires and billionaires, I am sure we can find a responsible way to prevent piling on even more debt on our college students. I urge my colleagues to vote for defeat of the previous question and adopt a bipartisan, bicameral solution that can be quickly signed by the President.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Florida.
Continue to reserve the balance.
The gentleman continues to reserve. The gentleman from Colorado.
I'd like to inquire of the gentleman from Florida if he has or is expecting any additional speakers.
I do not.
Okay. It is my honor to yield 1 minute to the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Pelosi, the Democratic leader.
The gentlewoman from California, the Democratic leader, is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I thank the gentleman for yielding and for giving us this opportunity to talk about a choice we have here today. Everybody knows that it's essential to a democracy is the education of our children, of investments in the future, so that people can reach their own personal self-fulfillment, and provide for their families, but also so that our country can be competitive in the global economy. It is a very important part of the American dream. Democrats believe in building ladders of opportunity where people can have opportunity to succeed if they want to work hard, play by the rules, take responsibility. An important rung of that ladder is education. We all know the impact that the GI Bill had on America's great middle class, growing America's great middle class, the education of our returning veterans to our country, enabling them to have more education than their parents, and that has been the way it has always been in our country's history, the enduring theme of reigniting the American dream. And so we have a challenge before us because the clock is ticking on a July deadline. At that time, left to the budget of the Republicans, the Ryan Republican Tea Party budget, there would have been a doubling of interest rates from 3.4% to 6.8%. We've been having this debate for a while on how we could stop that doubling from happening. The Republicans told us they were tired of hearing about the interest rate debate. Until now, thanks to President Obama taking this issue public so the American people understood what was at stake here and that the doubling of interest rates would deprive some people of even going to college and be more costly for many others. In fact, 7 million students would be affected, and that means at least 20 million people, assuming they have an average of 2 people in their families. So this has a direct impact on many people in our country. It's a bread and butter issue. It's a kitchen table issue where people talk about how they're going to make ends meet, and one of those ends is the education of their children. So all of a sudden, the Republicans in the House have seen the light. They're willing to reverse a vote that they took not more than a week ago. 100% of them voted for the Ryan budget, which would allow the interest rates to double from 3.4% to 6.8%. Thank God they've seen the light. Thank you, President Obama, for shedding some light on this, and now they say they're for stopping that. But how do they want to pay for it? They want to take it from their favorite target, women's health. I don't know why it hasn't dawned on them yet that the health of America's women is very important to the health of America's families. And so they want to take the funds from women's health and then also childhood immunizations. That's very important. The immunization of every child in America is important to every other child in America. And that's where they want to take the money from. With the motion that we have here today is to say, instead of taking the money, instead of robbing Paula to pay Peter, we should be taking the money from the tax subsidies that go to big oil in our country. That's what we should be doing. Isn't that a better show of what our values are, that we value the health of our women and our children? Why would we? And not only, to make matters worse, not only are they suggesting that we take the money from the prevention fund, the immunization and screening for breast cancer and cervical cancer and other women's health issues. Not only are they saying we should take the $5 or $6 billion from there, they're saying we should take the additional $5 billion that would be left in the account and repeal it. Repeal it. We're not even, we're taking twice as much money as we need for the student loan bill because we want to do away. We're going to use this as an excuse to do away with this prevention initiative that affects women's health so directly. It's outrageous. It's outrageous. We prefer tax subsidies for big oil rather than the health of America's women. Once again, they're targeting women's health. And so I urge my colleagues to vote against the previous question, so we will have an opportunity to at least put before the House an alternative that says, give us a choice to choose between whether we want to pay for the future, our young people's education by removing some of the subsidies to big oil, or we want to take it out of women's health. The very idea that the Republicans would deny us a vote to do that speaks very clearly about how focused they are on targeting women's health as something that they want to cut. So again, I urge my colleagues to vote no on the previous question, which would allow the House to vote on a Democratic bill that reduces the interest rates, keeps them at 3.4 instead of raising them to 6.8, which is in the Republican budget. And if we cannot do that, I urge my colleagues to vote no on this ill-conceived, way out of whack statement of values that we would make women's health pay for our children's education when we should be doing both. And so no on the previous question. If we're not allowed to do at least even take a vote no on the bill, and let's admit that we can do better than that. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Florida.
Continue to reserve.
Gentleman from Florida reserves. The gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself the remainder of the time.
Gentleman is recognized.
Minute and a half. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent to insert the text of the amendment, Mr. Tierney's bill, into the record along with extraneous material immediately prior to the vote on the previous question.
Without objection.
Thank you. And again, Mr. Tierney's bill will not only provide the House, as was passionately argued by Leader Ms. Pelosi and Mr. Tierney, the opportunity to decide between women's health or special tax breaks for oil and gas companies, but will also reduce the deficit by $7 billion. At a time of record deficits, when restoring the fiscal integrity of our nation is critical to our competitiveness and to job creation, I hope that this House acts boldly by defeating the previous question and allowing us to vote on reducing the deficit by $7 billion. With regard to CISPA, it simply strikes the wrong balance between security and liberty. Information sharing is important. I think a bipartisan consensus can be reached. And while I appreciate the spirit with which CISPA was offered and members of both parties worked on it, the bill is so far from perfect, we need to continue to work on it and defeat this rule and allow more amendments. Any American who values his or her privacy should be concerned by the implications of this bill, trusting big government and secret agencies with our most personal information. The reality is that CISPA represents a massive government overreach in the name of security. We need accountability and we need oversight. We can't have secretive agencies accountable to no one with vast powers over American citizens on our soil. For these reasons, I oppose the underlying pieces of legislation. I urge a no vote on the rule on the previous question, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Florida.
Mr. Speaker, I've been here now a year and 4 months, and I'm always amazed at what we hear from the other side. I hear about how this is supposed to be an attack on women's health. You know, it's interesting because, you know, that's the position that President Obama's taken. I understand that's the position that my friends on the other side of the aisle is, but it's not true. You know, yesterday in markup at Energy and Commerce in regards to this pay-for, they talked about a number of issues in regards to this slush fund that HHS has. Now, it's interesting, part of that slush fund comes out to a partly paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the Department's Communities Putting Prevention to Work campaign. $100 million. And part of it was in spaying and neutering pets, which I agree with, but I don't see how that is taking money away from women's health. If you go on to HHS website, where they actually chronicle the spending from this slush fund, not one place does it talk about cervical cancer or breast cancer in regards to the dollars spent. Not one place. So to stand here on this floor and accuse Republicans of being against women and women's health when the facts don't back it up. If you go to HH's website, you'll see specifically where the spending's been spent. Like I said, one area is $100 million. The other areas that they've gone after is media campaigns as it relates to soda, fast foods, and others. That's not women's health. The Democrats would like you to forget, Mr. Speaker, that in 2010, they took over $9 billion away from student financial aid. The same argument that they're making today, they took it away. Mr. Speaker, I wasn't here in 2010, so it's kind of hard to have your cake and eat it too. And when we said robbing from Peter to pay Paul, and now Peter needs the money, those are our students that need the money. Those are our students that can't afford to pay additional interest on loans that they're already having a hard time paying off because they are trying to find a job. Mr. Speaker, you know, we've heard so much about cybersecurity today, but remember this. The committee started their work on cybersecurity over a year ago in regards to hearings and working in a bipartisan way that produced a bill that was overwhelmingly bipartisan, 17-1. 17-1. And in this Congress, that's pretty difficult to do. But they saw the need, based upon their experience within where we stand today as it relates to threats against our infrastructure, those people that actually create jobs, and against our government. You know, not only have they worked tirelessly amongst themselves, but they reached out to other stakeholders that has been unprecedented, that I believe been unprecedented in regards to trying to craft a bill, while not perfect, but it is the step in the right direction. This isn't about government coming in, and you heard one gentleman up here talking about how government should tell businesses what to do. Well, folks, this is America. This is about the freedom for businesses. If they don't act upon information, shame on them. But it's not about government takeover of private businesses to tell them how to operate. It is about, though, the ability for government to help formulate the aspect of protecting our cybersecurity. It's all about that. It's about sharing of information. It's about, right now, the federal government is precluded from sharing information to help alert those businesses out there to protect themselves. We know about it. We can't even tell them. If you go back to 9/11, that was one of the inherent problems that we had back in 9/11, was the fact that we couldn't talk to each other, that agencies didn't talk and share information. And so now we want to set ourselves up for a greater catastrophe, one that could bring this nation down to its knees or worse. You know, you heard about regular order or not regular order. We had regular order on the cybersecurity bill, and it's not enough. I mean, 16 amendments were made in order. The gentleman from Colorado's amendment was made in order. 5 privacy-related amendments were made in order. 2 Republicans and 3 of those bipartisan. But a total of those 16 amendments made in order, 8 were Republican, 4 were Democrats, and 4 were bipartisan. Mr. Speaker, I believe in regular order, and I think that was a perfect example of how this House is supposed to work. That is regular order at its best. So you talk about a fair and open process. I want to make sure that we protect the American people. that when you go to bed tonight, your financial information is still going to be secure tomorrow. That you're going to have the ability to protect yourself financially, and one of those is to allow businesses to share cyber threats that are made against them and others, and also for the federal government to share when they see a cyber threat coming that could affect a business today in America. You know, HHS has discretion on how they spend that slush fund. Remember, that money was stolen from students back in 2010 to provide for their education. Stole it. Call it what you want, but now it's just righting the wrong. It's about making sure that our students have the ability to get an education and hopefully get a great job. I also heard my good friend from Colorado mention about how we're going to make a decision as to who's a national security threat. He mentioned the Tea Party in the same word with communists, so I think it's pretty clear. Tea Party is not a national security threat. Communism is. I don't think that takes a whole lot of rocket science. One thing about this, one of these things about both of these bills, certainly.
The point being made is that it depends on one's political perspective where one sees a national security threat. Some see it on the left, some see it on the right. I don't trust big government decision makers to decide who is and isn't a threat to security.
Well, reclaiming my time, you know, I get what you're saying. But at the end of the day, when you're trying to say, you know, I guess a description in regards to that, and you say communist, and then you say Tea Party, I think it's pretty clear. The Tea Party is not a threat to national security. Well, communism is, and it has been. Mr. Speaker, I support this rule and encourage my colleagues to support it as well. We're talking about two issues here today that have a lot of bipartisan agreement. Our nation's cybersecurity is just an integral part of our national security as a whole. It's part, not all, but part of our national security as a whole. And we agree something must be done with our nation's students as it relates to the loan debt that they have. These are issues that I think we all agree on, Democrats and Republicans alike. I know from some of our previous conversations that my friend Mr. Polis is a fan of NPR. So I wanted to let him know this, just in case you weren't. This morning, NPR did a story about the fact that China and Russia aren't the only threats to our nation's cybersecurity anymore. In fact, according to the story today, the newest cybersecurity threat we face today is going to continue and grow, and it's from Iran. Even though Iran might not have a strong cyber presence now as Russia and China do, it's continuing to grow. It's growing at the same time as their nuclear program is growing too. Iran has learned how to manipulate the internet, to shut down protesters in their own country, to hack websites that have pro-government or anti-government messages, and carry out sophisticated cyber attacks in their own country to identify those dissidents who may disagree with the government. With threats like that growing every day, we need to make sure our networks here at home in America are safe and secure. This bipartisan, I can't stress this enough, this bipartisan Rogers cybersecurity bill is it's critical. It's a critical step in ensuring America and our private industry are safe from cyber attacks. You know, we talk about bipartisan a lot in this chamber. We don't always practice it. But this committee not only practiced it, but they reached outside of the committee itself to those that may be supportive and may be opposed, and they tried to work and put forth amendments that would make this a better bill. And that's what it's all about. It's the amendment process, is to make something better, not tear it down. So I encourage, colleagues on both sides of the aisle to support this strongly, and I say strongly, bipartisan legislation, both on cybersecurity and protecting our students and student loans. as the President begins his taxpayer-funded college tour, which is really more like a re-election tour, he's going to be talking a lot about student loan debt. Well, he can talk all he wants, because this House, in this House, we're going to act, and we're going to do it in a way that fixes a problem that this was a temporary fix for 5 years. Well, guess what? We're going to fix it again. We're going to make sure that our students have the ability to get a college education and be able to pay it back in a way that they can be successful in the future. We're going to make sure that the student loan debt, the ratio or the student loan rates don't double come this July 1st. And in Washington speak, to a lot of people, that's a ways off, but up here, this House, this Congress, has kicked cans down the road before to the tune of 20 years when they're looking out and saying, oh, we got plenty of time, and all of a sudden we have other issues facing this country, and now we have one here. And this House is taking action to correct a wrong or a problem that exists today in America, both in cybersecurity and in student loans. And we're going to do it without costing the taxpayers anything. By taking money out of the Obamacare slush fund, which was funding by cuts to student loan programs to begin with, and sending it back to our student loans. Now remember, this slush fund can be used for anything. As we saw, they use it for a whole bunch of things, but not one, as they tried to link us to women's health issues, not one of those were related to that. Not one nickel or dime was spent on those, even though I'd like to say it was. And so, Mr. Speaker, I support the rule and the underlying legislation, and with that I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The question is on order in the previous question on the resolution. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker?
Gentleman from Colorado.
On that I request the yeas and the nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. Pursuant to Clause 8 and Clause 9 of Rule 20, this 15-minute vote on order in the previous question will be followed by 5-minute votes on adopting House Resolution 631 if ordered, and suspending the rules and passing H.R. 2240 if ordered. This is a 15-minute vote.
A procedural vote, the last chance to change the rule that sets the guidelines for debate on two bills. One is cybersecurity legislation being debated later today, and the other is a bill that would prevent student loan interest rates from increasing, which would come up in the House tomorrow. First, let's hear about the cybersecurity bill from a Capitol Hill reporter.
Tim Starks writes for Congressional Quarterly. Well, with the House working on cybersecurity legislation today, we have the White House last evening issuing a threat to veto. What are the administration's concerns?
Well, the administration has two major concerns. One, they think the bill doesn't do enough as it pertains to protecting the most important computer networks that are owned by businesses. Things like the electricity grid and the railroad control system. Those are things that this bill doesn't impose any new regulations or any new standards on. This bill is strictly focused on information sharing, and it leaves that part out that the administration thinks is essential. The second part is related to whether they think it adequately protects the personal data of information that the businesses would share with the federal government as part of what the idea of the bill is, to exchange information about threats. They don't think that, for instance, it does enough to protect, it's something called minimization. They don't have enough of that in the bill, which would make make sure that any data that goes from the businesses to the federal government, that the personal data related to the people that is shared is not is as extensively shared as it would be if they just handed the data over wholesale.
What's the aim of the bill being brought today by House Intelligence Committee Chair Mike Rogers?
Well, his aim is to make sure that the businesses that own these networks that might be attacked by hackers or spies or worst case scenario nation states, that those businesses get information from the federal government. Right now, a lot of that data is classified. There would be a procedure in this bill that would allow these businesses to have temporary or permanent security clearances. So they would be able to receive the threat information that the federal government gets under that procedure. And the other thing it would do is make it so that there would be incentives for the business groups to voluntarily share the threat information that they're seeing on their end. So by, for instance, giving them some legal protections related to privacy laws and for any information that they exchange, and making sure that they aren't subject to a bunch of lawsuits.
Who's opposed to that legislation, and what are their concerns?
Well, the administration starts. There's some House Democrats that are opposed to the bill. Some of their objections are similar to some of the major groups outside of the Capitol Hill that are opposed to it. They share some of the administration's concerns about how much information is shared, how it is shared from the standpoint of privacy and civil liberties. Particularly, one of the things that this bill doesn't do that some of those groups would have wanted to see is make sure that no information goes directly to the hands of the National Security Agency or other military agencies because of historical wrongs that have been related to the NSA, and other spy agencies having track records that aren't considered very positive when it comes to, protecting the privacy of individuals in the United States.
Any amendments in the spotlight that you're watching today?
Well, there are a few amendments that are actually backed by the committee and the sponsors because they have been trying to ease these concerns about the privacy, situation, the privacy concerns that people have about their bill. So some of those are amendments that will help go a ways toward easing some concerns, although not some of the ones that I just mentioned about that are left unaddressed about NSA and who receives the data. So some of the things that limit the purposes, for instance, for which the government could receive the cybersecurity data, those are important amendments toward long-term support of the bill. The other amendments there are some other amendments out there that are not considered as favorable by the sponsors. Things like sunsets that would expire the bill in 5 years. Things that would even further narrow the scope of the purposes of the information that can be used. There are a few like that will probably have trouble getting enough passage, but there's also a sense some of these bills have been sponsored by some of these amendments have been co-sponsored by Republicans. So we'll see how that plays out, whether they'll actually have enough votes to narrow the bill further than the sponsors want it to be narrowed.
Now, in one of your stories earlier this week, you highlight the lobbying effort behind this legislation. Who are some of the key players, quickly?
Well, business groups are very influential on this. The whole issue of the anti-piracy bills that were controversial a few months back, SOPA and PIPA, those two bills, those bills were opposed not only by privacy advocates but also by technology companies. This bill is sponsored not only by the major business groups like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, but it's not sponsored but endorsed by. It's also supported by some of those technology groups, your Facebooks, those kinds of companies that had an earlier role in defeating SOPA and PIPA. So they're influential on the side in making sure that it gets through, and then on the other side of people who are opponents are the privacy groups.
A lot to be said about this legislation. Tim Starks is a staff writer for Congressional Quarterly. We appreciate your time today.
Thanks for having me.
In addition to the cybersecurity bill, the rule includes a bill that would prevent student loan interest rates from doubling on July 1st from 3.4% to 6.8%. Earlier today, during her weekly briefing, House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi said that House Democrats will be whipping against the GOP proposal on student loan interest rates. The National Journal writes that Republicans and Democrats have picked a fight over paying for the legislation to keep student loan rates low, with an eye toward scoring points and throwing punches in the November election campaign. Senate Democrats focused on Mitt Romney's past support, while Governor of Massachusetts for closing tax loopholes on S corporations, which is the Senate Democrats' proposed offset for the $6 billion legislation. But Republicans sought to one-up the Democrats by proposing to pay for the legislation by weakening Obamacare, tapping a fund to help prevent chronic disease included in the administration's health care law. That in the National Journal. In a press release, House Speaker John Boehner said the vote tomorrow to extend student loan interest rates would be paid for by eliminating a slush fund in the president's health care law, and going on to say that the law is one of the reasons American small businesses today are not hiring more recent college graduates. But as we saw on the floor earlier, Representative George Miller, who's the senior Democrat on the House Education and Workforce Committee, he has issued a statement saying, "I commend the House Republicans for reversing themselves on the pending student loan interest rate hike, but I'm deeply disappointed that Republicans propose extracting the price from women and children to take health care away from middle-class and low-income families in order to keep interest rates from rising for middle-class and low-income college students is simply wrong. It's robbing Peter to pay Peter." Part of a statement from Representative George Miller. This procedural vote continues related to two bills, one that promotes information sharing between the federal government and businesses, and another one dealing with student loan interest rates. The National Journal writes that the Senate Agriculture Committee Chairwoman Debbie Stabenow announced today that she expects her committee to take a final vote on the Farm Bill during its markup today. We spoke with a Capitol Hill reporter to get some background on the bill. Chuck Abbott is on Capitol Hill covering the Farm Bill for Reuters. What are a few of the changes in the bill?
Well, excuse me. Most notably, the proposal being given to the committee by Chairman Stabenow will create a new farm support system. Since the 1930s, farm supports have been based on government attempts to prop up market prices. So with the particularly in the last 6 or 7 years, we've had a run of very high market prices, including usually we've had record high prices. And there's a belief that a new system would be a better choice, and this new system would be an insurance-like program which would protect farmer revenue against low prices and the effect of bad yields or bad weather. So that I mean, it's a more comprehensive approach to farm supports than has been used since farm subsidies began. That's the big thing in what's called the commodity title. In the conservation portion of the bill, there would be less land would be set aside for long-term, set aside from crops for long periods of time, and more attention would be paid on what is called working lands, which is the land that produces crops. And the idea is that there would be more of a focus of lower cost supports that encourages farmers to practice soil, water, and wildlife conservation as part of producing crops.
Well, it sounds like some major changes. How are groups reacting to it? What kind of lobbying is happening?
Well, the well, as you know, the markup was delayed for a day, partly because some of the groups, from particularly southern producers, rice and peanuts, were unhappy with what was in the bill. The approach that Chairwoman Stabenow is taking to what is called a shallow loss revenue protection program is most popular in the Midwest, which means it appeals to corn and soybean growers the most. It has some support from wheat growers. It's less popular in the South, where growers say crop insurance has not been a good deal for them, and so creating another program similar to crop insurance may have its drawbacks. And the rice growers particularly were upset because there was very little in the bill offered for them back in the fall during this super committee process. The leaders of the House and Senate Agriculture Committees tried balancing this all off by saying, okay, we'll give some crops higher target prices, which means a higher guaranteed price for their products, and we'll give other crops, the chance to use this revenue program. But those higher target prices were taken out of the bill that's being presented to the committee.
The bill is some 900 pages long.
Right. It is.
Can you give us an idea of the scope of the bill? How many people does it impact?
Oh, well, one could say that it impacts everybody in the United States because it affects food production. That's a simple but rather large way of expansive way of defining it. But it affects people who care about environmental protections because farmers control something like 900 million acres of land in the United States, which is a good chunk of the United States. And there's also a nutrition section in the bill, which most prominently is food stamps, or now it's called the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. And that affects somewhere around 1 in 7 or 1 in 8 Americans right now because of the high unemployment rate. There's also sections on as it's called, energy, but it mostly means attempts to develop bioenergy, particularly in this case would be second generation biofuels, and to come up with biomass crops that could be another way for farmers to make money aside from traditional food crops. The bill has more than a dozen titles. I mean, there's research there's mention of research projects. There's international food aid programs. There's export promotion programs. There's programs to encourage farmers overseas to grow more food themselves, so they don't have to rely on international aid when they run short on food. It is an incredibly expansive bill.
Chuck Abbott is a commodities correspondent for Reuters on Capitol Hill covering the Farm Bill. Thank you.
You're welcome.
There are reportedly some 100 amendments to the Farm Bill. The Senate Agriculture Committee markup is happening live right now on C-SPAN 3. After this series of votes, the House will debate the cybersecurity bill. The Associated Press reports that the bill is designed to address the cybersecurity threat by getting the private sector and the government to share information to thwart attacks from foreign governments, terrorists, and cyber criminals. Although the information sharing is voluntary, civil liberties groups fear the measure could lead to government spying on Americans. The Obama administration's objections run deeper, according to the Associated Press. And in Congressional Quarterly, the administration strongly opposes the bill and has threatened a veto, saying it does not adequately protect either private sector computer networks or the personal data of U.S. citizens. In a policy statement from the Obama administration, it says it fails to ensure that the nation's core critical infrastructure is protected while repealing important provisions of electronic surveillance law without instituting corresponding privacy, confidentiality, and civil liberties safeguards. Part of a statement from the White House.
Ms. Clark of New York.
On this vote, the yeas are 241. The motion is ordered. Is on the adoption of the resolution as amended. Those in favor shall say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, on that I request the yeas and the nays.
The gentleman from Colorado is recognized. The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the